don't come for peace, I come for the storm. Fanboys melt quick when the truth gets warm. Saw content's high, I'm collecting those tears. Just got started, but I'm cutting through fears. I'm not here for brand deals, I'm not for sale. I expose your lies, rip off the veil.
The Switch launch has been really interesting because all we've seen is just the same old tired arguments against the Switch carried over onto the Switch 2.
No, we don't know. Can you please explain for once in your life, Harmon?
You know, the people who religiously hated the Switch 1 have now turned tail and started complaining about the Switch 2, even though...
Number one, Harmon, please get a good mic. Get a decent mic. Stop using your phone. Honestly, use a gaming headset. A gaming headset will record better audio than this. But just get something better than whatever you're using. It is really annoying. My software only can do so much. Well, my software plus my tech abilities can only do so much. And also, Harmon, the people that religiously hated the Switch 1 are not as many as you think there are.
These were the very same people insisting that a Switch Pro or a new console would fix all of Nintendo's problems.
Well, you yourself have even said that the Switch 2 is nothing more than a Switch Pro, a mid-gen refresh. So what are you complaining about? If they're complaining about it, it's probably because it was marketed as a Switch 2. It was not marketed and sold as a Switch Pro.
The reality of the situation is these people are never going to be happy no matter what Nintendo does.
Yes, Harmon, unfortunately, there are people like that in this world. But can you please get to your point? Can you please use some examples? Because I am not in your mood for shenanigans today.
And you can see this a lot by seeing people complain about the Switch 2's launch lineup. Right? You have so many people coming out and saying that they don't need it, that it's not a very good platform, that it's unnecessary, and the reality is...
Well, unfortunately, Harmon, now with me, I don't think this launch lineup is that bad. You have two good first-party games, even though one's like an indie game, that's a $15 game, which is that racing game. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. But then when it comes to all those third-party games, they happen to be reports. They're not even remasters, really. They're just reports, except for one. The Yakuza game, I believe, is an actual report or a remaster. So that one I will give some credit to. But all the rest of them were reports of very old games.
Completely different, you know. Not only is Mario Kart World a banger, you know, by far one of the best games of the year, way better than Mario Kart 8, by the way. I've been seeing a lot of people say 8 is better. That is not the case. I can safely say that now.
I honestly, I will think that Mario Kart World is slightly better just because I enjoy the grinding and the wall riding. But that's just my personal thing. I can accept if someone like Mario Kart 8 better than this one. I don't think really one is dramatically better than the other. I think Mario Kart World is a good addition, but the problem is, Harmon, it's the price point. And the whole Mario Kart World, the world aspect, the free roam, it's just boring. It's a lot of it's barren, and then when you do find all those P-switches, there's so many of them, and there's no incentive to do. They literally gave us the Breath of the Wild treatment like they did with the Korok seeds. They should have sat there and made an incentive to do all that stuff.
Not only do you have like Mario Kart 8, you have like a wide range of other titles that are available on the console, right?
Most of them are many-year-old reports, Harmon.
You have slop like Cyberpunk 2077 and Street Fighter 6, and you also have legitimately good games like Fantasy Life 2.
Never played Fantasy Life 2. Cyberpunk 2077 is actually a phenomenal game. And Street Fighter 6, I actually did enjoy Street Fighter 6, but that's because I liked the characters, the fighting was good. Yeah, I didn't enjoy like the... You know, I'm surprised you didn't like it when you were talking about the cartoon artsy style, which I would think with you being a Nintendo fan, you would have loved that game, to be honest. But when it comes to the story mode, yeah, the story itself is literally one of the most bare basic stories you can get. But overall, for that price that you get, plus both fighter passes, you know, I would have liked to prefer to be on a physical cartridge, at least the base game, but I would say you're actually going to get your money's worth for that game.
And Hitman World of Assassins, right? You know, there's lots of good games on here, like new and old alike. And
yes, that Hitman game is probably a very good game. The problem is the price. It's way too overpriced that they're giving it to you as. You can find another port of that game, and it's far cheaper.
the giant mega Kamehameha cope from a lot of people is complaining about like how these games aren't exclusive, conveniently ignoring the fact that there's
I don't think that they're complaining, Harmon, that they're not exclusives. The thing is, I don't think anybody's really seen a launch lineup where the majority of them are third-party reports of games.
Virtually no such thing as exclusives on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC, but somehow this is like a huge, massive deal breaker.
Okay, Harmon, you got 2 exclusives, and if we're being technical, PlayStation still has timed exclusives. Their games at the moment are still timed exclusive, so let's be honest about it.
For Nintendo fans who have never played games, the games that have been available on other consoles, right? So like Street Fighter 6, like, oh, I already played that, even.
Yes, and most people have. But Harmon, what is it that you're playing? I think you only enjoyed like maybe 4 of the games. You were one of the few people that actually bought the Welcome Tour. I swear, if I see the sales numbers of that Welcome Tour and they are sky high, literally the gaming industry is doomed.
Even though, someone like me like hasn't, It's been a giant Kamehameha cope. Even though that something like Fantasy Life 2.
Oh, Harmon, you keep upgrading your cope words. Honestly, I like the Giga Cope better. You need to go back to Giga Cope. That's way better than Kamehameha Cope.
Came out on like May 21st, 2025, and has like a better version available on Switch. That somehow doesn't count as a good Switch 2 game, even though like...
Harmon, you yourself have sat there and said that Street Fighter 6 is a terrible game. So how are you going to expect other people to sit there and say that? But yes, if people have played on other platforms, they're not going to be excited to play it on the Switch too. It's not like it's going to be any better here.
My time spent playing it, it's probably my favorite game I picked up for the console, and that's something that I did not have my eye on.
Please don't tell me you're talking about Street Fighter 6. In your live streams, you sat there and said you do not like that game, that you said it was horrible.
For a long while, Hitman, never played the series before. Like I played through like the first couple of levels. Amazing game. I'm like completely in love with it. Like my thing.
Congratulations. I am so happy that you are paying almost $60 for an overpriced game. You do realize currently right now, if you go online, you can get a PS5 version of that exact same game for $32. Congratulations, Harmon.
With the Switch 2 life cycle, right, having played Mario Kart World, which in and of itself it's worth owning the console for, people need 100% to stop complaining about ports. Like...
Hell no. Mario Kart World, that overpriced game, should not be sitting there selling that console. And unfortunately, there's no need to really go out and buy the console right now. Now, if you're a brand new person that hasn't even played the Switch, or if you missed out on so many of the Switch games, technically, yeah, you could buy it. And there are a lot of great games on the Switch that you will be happy with. Okay, you got Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, you got the Xenoblade games, you even got Breath of the Wild. I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom, but so many people say. I mean, there are a lot of great games that you can play from the Switch. So if you buy it, there are games to play.
Talking about like third-party games and like trying to downplay them by saying that they've been available on other consoles already or aren't that good in the case of the ones that are launching day one. Games like Rune Factory and the like.
Harmon, it is not good to sit there and be like, oh, we got all these great games for launch games. Reports of old games from different platforms shouldn't really count. Now, if they're a remastered version, then that's fine. Nintendo should have stepped up and released some more first-party remasters for the launch. That was what would have made it better.
The reality is, Switch 2 has had games right from the onset, right from the get-go, and...
Can you please name some, Harmy?
In a wide range of different genres, and like the gaming community is doing everything it possibly can to downplay it and act as if these games are like somehow underwhelming or disappointing or like...
No one is saying that they're disappointing, but you guys are sitting here running around saying, oh, we got all these great games, we got these third parties. That's not something to be excited for. That just shows how bad your company was that they couldn't get those before, Harmon.
Not that good. It's just laughably dumb. Mario Kart by itself is like carrying the console launch.
That's extremely sad when an overpriced game like that is what's carrying it.
we're talking about something that probably has like close to like 100% like attach rate, right? We seriously had that conversation on stream that like this game might be one of those things that like every Switch 2 owner owns, right?
Most likely they are, especially when they look at that. They're given the illusion that they have a deal, but when they find out that Japan gets one for almost a third cheaper, then they realize that they're getting ripped off.
But, you know, the people who, the average person who owns like Mario Kart World is not going to have every single game that's available on the console.
Well, I mean, if we're only talking about Switch 2 games, it's not like that there's that many to begin with that they had a Switch 1.
You know, so you're going to be seeing people pick up Hitman. You're going to see Hitman. You're going to see people pick up like Fantasy Life. You're going to see people pick up like Rune Factory. You're going to see people pick up like, you know, Street Fighter 6, you know.
I would sit there and say you can also pick up Split Fiction, but I don't know if he actually has anybody that would play with them, because we know that Pikachu that's always beside him won't play with them.
This has clearly been a very successful console launch with a wide range of games, and yet
if it had some more first party, then I would agree. But I'm not going to count Fast Fusion. There you go. Now I remember. I'm not going to count Fast Fusion and Mario Kart World as like all being amazing, okay? Those are good add-ons, but I would have said they should have came out with, you know, how they did the All-Star Collection for the Switch with Mario Kart Sunshine, 64, Galaxy. What they should have done was take 3 games from the Wii time, or not the Wii, I mean the Switch time, comprise them into one collection and called it like New All-Stars or whatever. That's what I think they should have done. For all the thank you, all the money they made off of you guys, that was the least that they could do.
You have people like dismissing it for like very arbitrary, petty reasons, you know, like this idea that like, oh, that's available on Switch, the original Switch as well, so that doesn't count, even though
Harmon, I am not counting those BS upgrades, and I am not going to sit there and count the horrible Hogwarts Legacy deal that they're giving you. Giving you a horrible game and then re-giving you guys the same damn game, just being a better version of it and still charging you for it. Screw that. That is BS, and you should not be accepting that.
The Switch 2 like noticeably upgrades like every Switch 1 game. You know, you have people complaining about like,
yeah, and a lot of them you have to pay $10 to $20 for on top of their damn base price.
You know, games coming from other consoles, and you have people like straight up ignoring brand new games, you know, like Fast Fusion and Rune Factory.
Yeah, Rune Factory is actually a good one. Fast Fusion, that's just an indie game. Most of us do not get excited for indie games, Harmon.
You know, like it's been like, it's always like this when it comes to Nintendo release schedules. You know, all of these people like refuse to acknowledge like everything but the absolute like cream of the crop biggest Nintendo games. But like,
that's because of fanboys like you. If you fanboys would keep your mouth shut, then people wouldn't have to say anything. But unfortunately, you fanboys like to involve yourselves where you're not qualified to be at.
It's bad this time. Right, it's embarrassing because this console has clearly been like extremely successful right out of the gate, and yet you have like the general community just doing everything it possibly can.
Harmon, it's too early to tell if this is going to be a widely successful console. I know you want to sit there and say it's going to outsell the Switch, but we both know that that's not possible.
To just downplay it and just like act like this is some like major disaster. Like this is somehow like some...
Okay, Harmon, I think you're stretching. Most of us are not sitting there saying that this is a disaster. Okay, a lot of us can sit there and say that it's been a successful launch. Maybe not as successful as you think in your head.
Some huge like failure of a console. Like, you know, I just saw Grums like a couple of minutes ago. Like, oh, I'm not picking up a Switch 2 because nothing on it interests me.
Well, Harmon, if you take away all those third-party ports, a lot of people are not well, not a lot, but there are some people that do not like racing games. They're not interested in Mario Kart, and a $15 game like Fast Fusion is not going to make them want to go buy a $450 system.
And it really just dawned on me recently just how people like Grums, who have made their entire careers over like complaining about the current state of the gaming industry, how they can't admit what's right there in front of their face. You know, like the reality is,
like how you can't admit that Nintendo is a terrible, greedy corporation that is very anti-consumer.
If you want to play good video games, you're only going to get it on Nintendo hardware. You know, Grums can cope and seethe all he wants about like PC gaming, but the reality is Nintendo is better.
Harmon, if you're listening, you're talking nonsense.
There is no disputing that at this point. But like, you know, the general average like 40-year-old grifter, like,
Harmon, there are great games on every platform, even including Nintendo.
cannot bring himself to admit it. You know, like, and this is like a reoccurring thing throughout like all these people. You know, I've seen Keemstar do it, I've seen Angry Joe do it, I've seen Darkside Phil do it. You know, it's a reoccurring thing with all these people who hate video games but still somehow find themselves in the gaming industry. You know, they are.
Okay, I'm only going to speak for Angry Joe because the other ones either I don't know about or I don't care. But Angry Joe does actually care about video games. I do think he has been tamed since he first started. But nonetheless, he does like video games. Well, that's going to be it for my reaction. Please give it a like, share, and subscribe. And remember, let's get this video up to 250 likes and I will release the full version of the song that I wrote from the intro and the outro. And until next time, guys, stay vigilant.
You can cry in the comments, but you won't survive. Like and subscribe if you feel that vibe. We're hot and salty tears.